Alrighty, well, hello everyone, and welcome back. It's your favorite Jackson Wheat show. Yay! I'm sure you're all happy to be here. We've got 11 people in the side chat so far. That's so many people. Alrighty, let's see who we got. We got Lance, My Unfinished Journey, Harvey Birth, DM Confederates Killed Pterodactyl's Wing. That's true, by the way. And Hydroid. Hello. Joining me today is my host and co-host, as always, Peter.
Hello.
Welcome.
It's great to be back. As always.
You had a good week?
No, I had a lot of stress this week. And now the rest of the week is going to be a lot of hard work. But, I mean, you need to do things every once in a while. But if
That's
all,
understandable. Savage.
If all is well, we will have an extra room this winter. Basically a front porch that we can close off electrically, so the walls will come down and shit, and it'll be nice if I get it done.
Nice. And also Savage Cobra, the cursorial angiosperm. Is that like the magnolia running up the hill? Is that what that's a reference to? And also we have Neslig, who is one of my editors, and he is also joining us today. Welcome.
And hello.
And we have Brian Stevens.
Okay, well, angiosperms had to run uphill fast to avoid the flood, right?
Right. That's why they're in the high layers, not the low ones. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
Fortunately, there are no angiosperms that are near the beach. Not a single one.
As opposed to the pterodactyls, because God forgot to tell them that they could fly like birds. So that they ended up quite underneath everything because they forgot how to fly, apparently.
They were doing like the running on their forewings. You know, they were trying to escape, but they could only run. They couldn't fly. So, yeah.
Also, is it just me, or does Peter have a bit of static in his microphone? It wasn't before we went live, but now it is a bit static on Peter's end.
On my end?
I don't know. There's always a bit of static during these things. I don't know if it's
not too much. We can just move on.
Yeah, I also don't normally hear it like because I had to listen and see where we left off, and I didn't hear any static.
Maybe
it's fine.
Maybe it's just me. I brushed my hair, so that's where you get your static from, right? Brushing your hair.
It's only when you talk, then you hear a little static in the background.
Yeah, that's what my girlfriend says as well.
It's only very minor, so it's no big deal.
I just did a show, and I told Jackson just before we went live, when I do a show on my own channel, I'll do everything wrong. So I didn't set the auto start, so I had to start the show manually on YouTube. And then I forgot to unmute my co-host and my guest. And then people in the side chat kept saying, well, it might be better if Peter's muted. Now your mic is playing up again, Neslig. So
really? My mic?
Yes. I can see it because your icon is flashing. People can't see that. I can. But yeah, so apparently not only people on YouTube, the people in my house like me muted as well. Seems I'm best when I'm muted.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, should be like,
okay.
The cord came loose again. Like I'm now supplying my microphone with a separate power source, and the cord became loose again. So now I'm holding it tight. With something else.
Yeah, I need to address Deem Confederate killed pterodactyl's wing. The guy you know in Mexico is no longer. I was talking to him, hoping to get him to do a conversation, and then he sadly passed away. And I just kept missing his invites for his live shows. But yeah. So we'll never find out. He did do a GoFundMe because he wanted to catch a pterodactyl. and it cost, I think it was $5,000 in total, which some of which was paying people to stay on a piece of property 24/7, and they had they fenced it in, which is really good when you have pterodactyls. Make a fence around it, and once they get in, they will never be able to get out again. Wait, that's
like lobsters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I now remember from previous week that we had somebody in the live chat who wanted to come on, or is no longer there. Like last week, we had somebody in live chat who would
from
like
Brazil.
to join.
Yes, the guy from Brazil, but he
from Brazil, yeah.
He hasn't emailed me. I put my email address in, but he hasn't emailed me. Oh,
that's okay.
All right.
Alrighty. Well, we're continuing with DiscoveryU because it's a YouTube channel or a blog.
UINO.
Jackson,
University in name only. Yeah.
It's uneducation. That's
right.
That's
Discovery on education.
Yes, that's where the U stands for.
Yeah, and so far we've gone through, I think, a couple of lessons, 1 or 2, something like that, in their discovering intelligent design playlist, or whatever the class. I can't put enough quotes around that because it's really just a blog post. There are no citations to anything. There are no figures. There are no there's no explanation for most things. Like it's just like bullet points. It would say things like,
or maybe they just
moths don't land.
Yeah, maybe they just don't want you to fact check everything, Jackson, because that's such a nuisance.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah,
it's a bunch of mantras like communism is when no iPhone, for example.
Yes, correct. But also communism is when everyone have iPhone. So
here's the thing, though. What is this, Jackson? Can you see it? It flips open.
The lighter?
It flips open like that.
Oh, it is a lighter.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I call it my creationist stumper, because I had a creationist on and I asked him what his definition of truth was, and he said, "That's God. All truth comes from God." So I held up my lighter and I said, "I'm holding up a lighter," and immediately he thought, this is going to be fishy, and said, "Well, that might be CGI." So I lit my lighter for him, showing that it was a real lighter, and he accepted that it was a real lighter. And I said, "Is it true that I'm holding a lighter? And if so, where did God come in the last few seconds?" And he was completely silent. So apparently people say things but don't think it through. Yes, Icarus, it's a Zippo.
I don't know. It's probably the whole that's probably like the Cartesian thing, or where he's like, you could be in a world where we're being tricked by like a masterful demon or whatever, but God is the source of all truth. So that's how we know that truth exists. And maybe that's what he was referring to. I don't know.
You know what was even funnier? He was talking obviously about design. He said, when you're on a beach and you find a watch, I mean, he didn't have his own argument, but so, and I said, but how would you know that the watch is designed? And then he started out, well, I would do it scientifically. I would take it apart and see all the cogwheels and would see that how it's built and how it works. And just before that, he told us that we were borrowing from the Christian worldview. And I said, so when it comes to finding out what is fact, you're borrowing from the atheist worldview. And that, again, completely silenced him. This guy's Pretty new. I did tell him that if he wanted, because he said, well, we have never seen evolution. And I said, no, not apart from the observed
Is he?
Macro evolution that we have. But if you want to have a chat, I know this guy who has a channel and occasionally co-hosts on my channel. He might be more than happy to talk to you about evolution. So we'll wait. Maybe I can have him on your.
Is he a flat earther by any chance?
No. He's as Godless Engineer called him, the ZZ Top version of Ray Comfort. He's got this long beard, and otherwise it's Ray Comfort.
Oh. So over the past few weeks, we've been going through the course, and yeah, like we were saying, it's just mantras. There are no facts. There's no citations. They don't want you to read anything except their own material, of course, because if you read anything else, then the whole narrative falls apart. Like as you know, we just said, moths being like infinite motion machines. You know, they never stop to rest. They just
well, they do, but they
forever until they die.
No,
I guess.
No, they avoid trees. They sit on everything except trees. Because
right, of course.
Yeah. Moths are civilized. They only get in cities and stuff, so there's not a lot of trees.
But also, soot only preferentially targets trees, as we all know.
Yes.
When the soot comes out of the smokestacks, it only hits the trees. It touches nothing else. Everything else is fine.
Well, but that's because trees can't get out of the way, Jackson. They're in a fixed position. They're an easy target, so that's
unless they are cursorial angiosperms.
Correct. Or maybe some of them are running away so fast they accidentally run into the soot. Maybe that's what's happening.
I
don't know. Let's see. Last time we started a new lesson about our favorite topics: punctuated equilibrium and the Cambrian explosion. And so, because we've never talked about those subjects on this channel before, it never happens, never comes up.
Oh, it's a very fresh subject.
Especially not when when you're talking to a certain Muslim. I keep bringing that up. That was the most frustrating thing I've ever seen. I thought, debate about the Cambrian explosion.
Yeah.
2 hours. Guess what? Never got mentioned. The Cambrian explosion.
Yeah, it's true. We never talked about the Cambrian. Because, well, for Finding Truth, as for Stephen Meyer, it's not about the actual data. It's not about what does RJ like to call it? He says like the data floor, something like that. Anyway, you have your set of facts about the Cambrian, about the fossil organisms in the Cambrian, but it's not about that. It's about the narrative, which is information. Ooh, you have less complex organisms by their definition, whatever that may be, in the Precambrian, and then suddenly you have a bunch of complex organisms in the Cambrian. And the narrative is, well, they just popped out of nowhere with no relevance at all to the preceding organisms. And of course, that's nonsense. The more fossils we get in, the harder it is to maintain this narrative. What'd you say, Nestle?
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, I was done. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, it's almost like they are just starting from the conclusion, like they are starting from a narrative, and then then proceed from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's what all these apologetic organizations do. It's the Bible is absolutely inerrant, and if you try to argue with it, you're necessarily wrong, even before you give the argument. Or it's intelligent design is true, even before we discuss any facts. That you're right. It's always conclusion first, arguments second. So,
by the way, did you
like they never really?
Yeah, did you know that they had the internet in the time of Abraham? I didn't know that.
What?
It came up in my show. I said, well, things in the Bible are mutual exclusive. And he said, can you name one? And I said, yes, there's a verse where it says, no one has seen the face of God. And then there's an entire chapter of God visiting Abraham and having dinner with him. So he clearly saw the face of God. He was talking to him. And this guy came up with the perfect explanation for that. And he said, well, you and I are now talking. And I can see you, but I can't really see you. I see you through the internet. And I chose not to go into that and ask him who the internet provider was and if they had a version of YouTube back then. I don't. It's
That's
God used the hologram.
yeah. They did.
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't use.
Why does God need a starship?
Yeah, they didn't use StreamYard. They used Bible Yard. We should make a show. Call it Bible Yard.
That is a. I think Arn's already beat us to the punch on that one. So
yeah. Well, he's got
but anyway,
the Blasphemer's Bible, which is a lot more fun than the actual one.
Yeah, it's true. Alrighty, you guys ready to hop hop back into class?
We can do that.
Oh,
all right.
One point I wanted to make was like I've heard them saying that the Cambrian explosion lasts for like a few million years, but they never define it. They never define like what characterizes the beginning and what characterizes the end. Like what organisms puts the boundary basically. We know that the base. Like we know that the base of the Cambrian is defined as the appearance of a
Trepticnus pedum. Yeah.
Yes. An ichno genus. Yes. A trace fossil, right? Yes. That defines the base of the Cambrian. But what defines the base of the explosion according to them? Like I've never heard that before.
I haven't either, and I really don't think that you're ever going to get an answer to that. In part because again, it's narrative. It's not about. It's the Cambrian explosion was fast. How fast? Too fast for evolution. What does that mean? Don't worry about it. You know.
Yes.
If you try to, they never try to put forward like actual like population genetic arguments. Like how long would it have taken arthropods to develop, this many mutations in this time period, right? Instead, they have their very stupid the waiting time problem, which relies on like no actual genetics whatsoever. It's just totally bogus. So yeah, you're never gonna get that.
It also relies on I've seen somebody else point this out before. It relies on a fallacy called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy.
Yes.
Are you familiar?
Yes. Yeah, because your sequence is specified in advance, right?
Yes. Like you already defined, like you got this outcome, and you draw a circle around it, and saying like, oh, this is the goal, and look what happens. The goal was met. But you're only defining the goal after the fact. That's the fallacy.
Right. There was a paper. Oh shoot, who was it? There was a paper by two people. I don't remember. What their names were. But anyway, they were addressing Michael Behe's, I think, The Edge of Evolution, in which he made the claim that it would take a certain amount of, like a really long amount of time for humans to develop it's like a promoter region given a couple of mutations. And their argument was, well, if that isn't the actual specified sequence, if it's just how long would it take for a promoter region to appear, then it's way less time than you need. But you've specified a very particular set of circumstances that don't have to be true for a promoter region to appear. And so, yeah, it would take like no time at all, geologically speaking, for this to occur, given like actual realistic expectations. But of course, they're not playing with realistic expectations. So,
Yeah, I like to pull up the analogy of like the individual genome as a product of random recombination. Like your parents has an indefinite, like your two parents or any two individuals has an indefinite number of possibilities regarding their offspring, because like you have many places where recombination can occur. So you could have an infinite number of different siblings, each genetically unique from the other, but most of them will never be born.
Right.
That like so like and then when you are born, you say like, oh, I was destiny. Like I was the goal of
Right.
my parents. Like no, you are you won the genetic lottery in this case. That's what happened.
I think we see a lot of that, like with conspiracy theories, for instance. A lot of conspiracy theories are focus on like such and such outcome was necessary or was predetermined, and it's like no,
Yes.
it wasn't. It was, here are the conditions that led to this, but it was not the goal. Yeah, and so I don't know. I see that a lot.
I think it's I don't know what it's called, but I think the appeal to those beliefs is that it makes the world seem less random than it really is.
Well,
Like
yeah,
it gives the illusion of
oh shoot,
control. Yeah, it gives
what
the
is it
illusion of
called?
control.
It's like the pattern recognition thing, the like hyperactive pattern
As
recognition.
that's also a thing, but like what I'm talking about is different. Like I think it's people get really uncomfortable about things that are outside of our control. Like it's really
Sure,
scary, the idea
sure.
that a new virus can just pop up and kill millions of people is really scary. But when
Yeah.
you believe that it's designed in a lab by somebody, like, oh, there is some control in this world at least, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. And I've seen papers about that, but yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. All
Yeah.
right, okay, chapter outline.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into it. So we read the objectives last time, and so now
Yes.
we're actually getting into the meat. And I know you guys didn't see it, but there were quotes around that of the chapter. Okay. Darwinian gradualism.
Vegan meat?
The home.
Vegan meat?
It's vegan meat. Yeah, there's actually no meat involved. Right. It's an impossible meat. Yeah. The hallmark of Darwinian evolution is gradual change. That's true. And in fact, I would say Darwin was actually attacked by people in his own camp, like Ernst Haeckel, for this, for saying that we can only proceed via gradualism, because Haeckel thought that opens up for us an unnecessary target on evolution, because as we've probably heard before, natura non facet saltus or saltum, which was what Linnaeus said.
Yes.
And Darwin repeated
Nature
that.
does not make leaps. Yeah, nature does not make leaps. Yeah.
And Darwin repeated that in Origin of Species, and Haeckel and I think Huxley were both kind of like, we don't really have to stick with this. We can allow for rapid evolution. We don't have to stick with all evolution requires this like infinitesimal gradients. And I think there's also some theoretical arguments that can be made against that. For instance, like how gradual is gradual, right? And Dawkins talks about like the constant like speed, the constant speedism in Blind Watchmaker. Like, what do you mean when you say like changes gradual? This changes very like incremental. How much is in each increment, right? Because there has to be some measurable amount of change between two alleles, or some measurable like difference in how they perform in the environment. Otherwise, natural selection is not going to be able to select between them, right? I mean, that's the whole point. So there has to be some measurable difference. Okay. Darwin proposed that all organisms evolve via descent with modification. I mean, yeah, it's still true. and predicted that the number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed on the Earth must be truly enormous. Yeah, that's probably true. When those transitional forms weren't found, as in we've like stopped looking, I guess, he called it the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. Okay, remember, folks, Origin of Species was published in 1859. That not 1959, 1859. The word dinosaur had been published, or had been, I guess, created 17 years before Origin of Species was published. There were like maybe a dozen species of dinosaurs that were known by the time Origin of Species was published. Like a dozen.
Pretty much the field, or at least the modern, as we know it, the field of paleontology was like new in his lifetime.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah, almost. Of course, there were precursors. I think Cuvier was like the father of paleontology, which lived before him. Yeah, but even he was like, oh wait, species can go extinct. That's a new possibility, right? Apparently, like people didn't know that species could go extinct. They didn't know before.
Right. There were arguments about that because, like, the idea that species, or that there were creations, God's creations on Earth that could then go extinct. That was a heretical idea, So yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of funny to pose. When Darwin said this, he said it in Origin. So this is from chapter, I think, 7 of... Yes, you're exactly right. The quote is out of context. Yeah, if such forms are not found, it would be. Yes. Darwin had not gone out looking for these forms, and paleontology was a very new field, as you're saying. So the idea that by the time Darwin wrote Origin, like, they threw up their hands and were like, oh, I guess that's it. We're done here. Like, no. Darwin incorporated more transitional fossils as more editions of Origin came out. So by like, I think it was there were 6 editions of Origin, if I remember correctly. By the 6th and final edition, there were a number of transitional fossils that Darwin referred to, such as Halotherium, which was an early Sirenian, so a member of the manatee group, Basilosaurus and Dorodon, which were early cetaceans. They still had hind limbs, which no modern cetaceans do, except when they have atavisms. He mentioned Compsognathus and Archaeopteryx, pointing out how there were morphological similarities between Compsognathus and Archaeopteryx that united birds and reptiles. I'm trying to think, what else did he mention? I can't remember offhand. Hipparion, another one, that was a horse, which had 3 hooves instead of just the one that modern horses have. So there were a bunch of examples that Darwin had then. We have infinitely many more now, but he had a few. He had an idea. He was correct in saying that this was an objection that could be urged against his theory. He was correct in that. However, fossils are found in his day that to some extent filled some of those gaps, or at least helped fill some of those gaps. And we filled many, many, many more of those gaps today with various new fossils. Recently, when we did the lungfish's tail, we talked about how Romer's Gap is the early Carboniferous, like the very first epoch of the Carboniferous. And it's true that for a long time, very few amphibians have been known from that time period. But in recent years, quite a number of them have been found, which are in that time period. So it's not like there were no tetrapods or no amphibians there. They were there. We just had to find deposits of the right age that helped us find them, of the right age and of the right ecology that allow us to find them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, also, a lack of fossil evidence for evolutionary transitions presents a critical and persistent problem for materialists. Okay, first of all, no. Second of all, why are they assuming that if you accept evolution, you're a materialist? That just isn't true. Not even all atheists are materialists. So that's just nonsense. They're trying to do this.
It's all black or white. Like you're either
Yes.
with us or you're against us.
You're either like pro, you're either pro evolution, pro abortion, pro LGBT, everything. You're a woke commie or you're a God fearing Christian. Those are the only options you have. You got nothing else.
Again, is that the AIG
Yes.
like a cartoon with the castle firing
Right.
cannons
With the
at each other,
balloons, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well,
Right,
Jackson,
yeah, that's all this is.
Also, you have to keep in mind that the goal of intelligent design is not to provide a mechanism for the diversity of life, but to poke holes in evolution.
Right.
And the more holes you can find, the better. So if you can invent a few, that's also nice.
This lack of transitional fossils challenges materialism tenet number 7.
Oh, we have tenets?
We have tenets?
We skipped a few. Oh.
Where are the tenets laid out? I have to see them now. I'm very curious. What are the tenets?
I like the choice of number 7. God likes 7. 7 days.
Yeah. That's so fun. Materialism. I didn't realize I abided by tenets. Fascinating. Okay. All living organisms are related through universal common ancestry. Now remember, Darwin did not necessarily believe that there was one tree of life. Darwin did not believe that. Not necessarily. He acknowledged in origin there may have been multiple like abiogenesis events that gave rise to life. By no means did Darwin think there's only one tree and everything's on that one tree. That's a more recent assessment. So again, they're trying to assign beliefs to Darwin that Darwin did not hold because they don't know anything. They don't know anything about, or maybe they do and they're just actively lying. Who knows? Anyway, Darwin attempted to save his theory of gradual evolution by claiming that intermediate fossils are not found because of the extreme imperfection of the geological record. Okay. Again, yes, he did. He did say that to Darwin, and actually to a lot of paleontologists. Even like Stephen Jay Gould acknowledges that the fossil record's imperfect. No one's saying the fossil record is perfect. When you're looking at the fossil record, you are looking at segments of time, right? So if your fossil record, for instance, if you're looking at a set of strata, and the strata are divided up into like 50,000 year like segments, it's not that every 50,000 years you have like a stratum. It's each stratum is laid down within like 50,000 years of the next one, right? So you're still getting, which is pretty fine scale. So that's pretty good for like sussing out evolution within some ecosystem. But still, that's only every 50,000 years. And some organisms are more likely to fossilize than others. That's why it's so hard to, like, if you were to, say like, well, where are all the fossil ciliates? Well, they're tiny squishy things. They just get destroyed when sediment gets laid down. They die and they just like fall apart. That's why there's so few jellyfish fossils,
I do have to ask one question, Jackson. Did Darwin actually say that intermediate fossils are not found? Or did he say they haven't been found and therefore there's an extreme imperfection of the geological record? Because the geological record is imperfect because we haven't found intermediate fossils. Isn't that the wrong way around? I mean, or is it just me?
He's saying, so Darwin says that one could say that because there aren't innumerable transitional fossils, this can be argued against evolution because he was arguing for phyletic gradualism, but also he was acknowledging that this is probably the case because the fossil or the geological record is highly imperfect. And again, everyone acknowledges this. Everybody acknowledges that the geological record's imperfect. Darwin was saying this is the reason we don't find.
Yeah. So my objection to the sentence is that it and Majestic P. Beck pointed it out in chat as well. Didn't he predict that they would be found eventually?
Yeah. Yes.
And this sentence makes it look that they won't be found because.
Oh no, he's not saying. He's saying that there would have been in the past innumerable of these transitions.
Yes, but I'm looking at
preserved.
I'm looking at the sentence which says they are not found.
Out of context, yeah.
Yeah, that's not entirely correct. The wording is not correct.
Well, yeah, I mean these are like, partial sentences being taken out of context.
Yeah.
They're not reproducing the actual quotation. But yeah, and so Darwin did predict that more transitional fossils would be found, and so by the time he was writing the 6th edition, he was like, yeah, look at these cool fossils that have been found. Oh, Stegodon was another. Stegodon was an elephant, an elephantid, and it was intermediate in some of its characteristics between like you have mastodons, which are Mastodon today is it's elephantiforms, I think. So Mastodon today is very basally derived in like the elephantiforms, and then you have elephantids, and then within that you have like Stegodon, these other guys, and so he was right. Mastodon has these characters which are more basally derived, whereas Stegodon has characteristics which are more derived compared to Mastodon, but more basally derived compared to modern elephants. So yeah, he was already aware of a number of examples. Also, we got RJ and Zach Hancock in the live chat. Hello, welcome guys. Thanks for joining. Okay. In recent decades, however, leading paleontologists have recognized that gaps between major taxonomic categories are not simply the result of an incomplete fossil record. That sentence doesn't mean anything. That sentence does not mean anything. It just doesn't. Okay, we can keep going. Rather, many of the gaps are real and are unlikely to significantly change based on new discoveries. Again, that doesn't mean anything. Actually, you know what?
That could be a prediction. False. Yeah, it's like because gaps are still being filled almost every year.
Right. You know what?
Yeah.
That which actually leads me to a point. When they're saying many of the gaps are real and unlikely to significantly change, they could make a prediction about that. They could say, for instance, I predict there will be no transitional fossils will be discovered between like lungfish and tetrapods. They could say that, right?
They won't.
Now, obviously, they'd be wrong, but at least they're planting their flag in the sand and saying, "Hey, my hypothesis predicts this," right?
Jackson,
but they won't do that because they're cowards.
So no, they won't do that because they know that what they're proposing is a lie, and the best way to get found out is if you make it a little bit too obvious and make mistakes. So that's why they won't do it.
And that's why you also won't get creationists to define like genetic entropy or information or complexity, because if you allow them to give you a definition, or if you force them and they eventually, kind of say, okay, well, I'll agree to this definition, then you can potentially meet it, which would be a problem for them, because then they have to deal with this, okay, well, given the definition that I agreed to, here's an observable example of, an increase in complexity or something like that. And they can't have that again. So they have to play hide the ball. It's always don't give definitions, don't make predictions, hide the ball.
Keep it nice and vague.
Like one key word in this sentence is significantly. Like how significantly is significantly? Who knows?
Right.
If we found next year a very important fossil that closes one gap that was vacant before, would they say like, oh, there you go? No, they would. Of course, they wouldn't. They would still say like, oh, you have still many other gaps remaining.
Right.
As always. Yeah, that's the game they are playing. Again, the Dr. Banjo game. Just move the goalpost around constantly.
How significant is significantly, right? Like, okay, well, we found Eusthenopteron. Well, that's not significant enough. Okay, well, we found Ichthyostega. Nope, still not significant. What about Acanthostega? Nope. Okay, Panderichthys, Tiktaalik, Parmastega. You know, where when can we say we found enough? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Never. You can never say you found enough.
Never enough.
The scarcity of transitional fossils is problematic for Darwinian theory. RJ says not just hide the ball.
You skipped one. You skipped one
second.
sentence.
It's make sure the ball is always on another field. They never play with it regarding their own species model. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the incompleteness of the fossil record, only a tiny fraction of known fossil species are claimed to be transitional forms. Depends on how you mean. I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you're defining like transitional fossil, because I would say obviously like, well, every individual that has offspring is transitional. Every fossil that displays characteristics that are like, you know, intermediate or basally derived with respect to extant taxa, you could say that's a transitional fossil. So like, I don't know what they mean specifically.
Transition is relative to what came before, what comes after. So it's
right.
So if you have species, for example, let's say like T-Rex, for example, like that is one of the latest tyrannosauroids. So T-Rex itself is not transitional because it was like one of the last ones of its group, for example. But there were transitional tyrannosauroids before T-Rex.
It's also, again, a stupid sentence. Despite the incompleteness of the fossil record, only a tiny fraction.
Right.
That is a result of a incompleteness fossil record. That would mean you would only have a tiny fraction. The more complete it gets, the bigger the fraction of known. Do these people read what they write?
Wouldn't it make more sense if they said, despite the incompleteness, many fossils are considered transitional? Wouldn't that make more sense?
They should have said, as a result of the incompleteness of the fossil record, only a tiny These people don't read what they write. It just doesn't make any sense.
These are,
and I'm Dutch.
All these points are coming from like Casey Luskin's fevered fingers as he's just like hurriedly typing, you know, all the points.
I'm Dutch. I can see the mistake in the English that you're using.
Right.
Despite being Dutch.
Despite being Dutch.
Pun intended.
Sai points out the definition of transitional is unclear. All species are transitional. Yeah, absolutely.
I would avoid that because then they will say like, oh, transitional doesn't really mean anything because like, if everything counts, then yeah.
Well, so I kind of agree. Like, you know, what do we mean when we say transitional? And then we could press them to say, okay, well, why don't we define what we mean when we say that? That way we don't have to argue whether a fossil is transitional or not if we have a definition going forward, right?
Yes.
Because then we can just say, oh, well, look, it has characteristic XYZ, so it fits the definition. For instance, there's one of the early papers by Gould and Eldridge. They look at Hyopsidas, which is a little early even hoof mammal. And Hyopsidas is so well preserved, and I think it was the Green River Formation, that you can actually see species to species changes in Hyopsidas. So you can see how one species gradually becomes a new species. The morphology changes as you go up the layers. And so I would say that's transitional, personally. You know, because it's one species transitioning into a new species. So, okay. All right. Explosions in the history of life. 1945. No.
The Rotterdam at the moment. For those who are Dutch, we've got a lot of explosions in Rotterdam.
Oh. The record consistently shows a pattern where new forms come into existence abruptly, which many have called explosions in the history of life. Yeah, that's true. A prime example of an explosion occurred during the Cambrian period about 530 million years ago, when nearly all of the major living animal phyla appear in the fossil record. This landmark event in the history of life is called the Cambrian explosion, and it took place within a geological eye blink, 5 to 10 million years, or possibly much less. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Much less.
I think I know what they're referring to, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So, okay, so yes, the Cambrian explosion. There's also the Ordovician explosion or radiation event, whatever. Explosion just means it occurred geologically rapidly. That's it. Which by geologically rapidly we mean millions of years. Just in case you forgot, it's not like 6 to 10,000 years ago. So the Cambrian explosion, again, I keep doing this, occurred about 530 million years ago. That's not true. If you look at the Cambrian as defined right now, I've seen arguments that the actual lowest stage of the Cambrian should be pushed back to when the last arboreomorphs disappear. Maybe. I don't. I have no skin in that game. Possibly. The point simply is that the Cambrian explosion. Oh, Savage Cobra, the crustorial angiosperm for $5 says, by their definition of explosion, a campfire is an explosion. Yes, it's very
well.
close.
I would disagree with that because they don't provide a definition.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. They don't provide a definition. Yeah. So the Cambrian explosion is a series of radiations. We've talked about this ad nauseum. We wrote the script for Professor Dave. Go watch his Stephen Meyer and Gunter Beckley videos. We talked all about it there. The short version is the Cambrian explosion is a series of radiations that started in the terminal Ediacaran and then flowed into the Cambrian and lasted through the Cambrian.
Yeah.
So depending on how you define Cambrian explosion, you could define it as like 80 million years, depending on how you want to do it. Because the stem lineages. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you finish first. Sorry.
Okay. Well, the stem lineages leading up to the Cambrian into the Cambrian, you have a radiation of stem lineages of different bilaterian phyla in the late Ediacaran. Then, as you get into the Cambrian, these guys get progressively replaced by crown lineages of different bilaterians, and then those crown lineages flower outwards also. And so that started like what was it, 550 million years ago, something like that. And what were you saying?
Like I was saying, it was basically your point that you cannot really pinpoint an exact point where like everything changes at this point, but because there's always something interesting happening before and always something that's relevant also happening after. So basically you can either go really specific, or you can say like it's just a continuous process from even before the Cambrian all the way through the Ordovician. It's the whole thing basically.
Yes,
the whole period. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because there's even argument at where does the Cambrian end and where does the Great Ordovician biodiversification event start? Because it's basically continuous, and we looked at a paper that mentioned that too.
There's also what was called the evolutionary fauna. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. You have the Cambrian fauna, the Paleozoic fauna, and the I think the modern fauna or the Cenozoic fauna.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the Cambrian fauna lasted from the Cambrian through to the end of the Ordovician, or at least that's when they were most prevalent. But then after the Ordovician extinction event, the Cambrian fauna became very rare until the end Permian, basically. Like you can look up the evolutionary faunas online and see how, like if three It's very difficult to explain because I don't know who did it, but there was one scientist who made a he looked at extinct fossil species and see how each species correlates with other species, and he found that there were three big correlations. Like, oh, these species in this group all like co-evolved with each other. Like if one became extinct, the other ones also tended to go extinct, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've done three separate groups like that. And the Cambrian fauna is basically the same as the Ordovician fauna. That's when the first fauna was most prevalent during these times. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, suffice to say, it's very difficult to disentangle when the Cambrian explosion starts and when Gobi starts and all this other stuff. It's all continuous, right? And so what they're doing when they say 5 to 10 million years is they are looking specifically at the high point of the radiation. There's a period of the radiation where you get the most diversification, and that's the 5 to 10 that's what originally was 5 to 10 million years, but it's more like, isn't it like 15 to 25, something like that? Because the 5 to 10 was based on the bow ring paper, wasn't it?
We discussed this point last week as well. Like there was this the Boeing et al. Paper, or at least right. Boeing, and another like two authors of the 1993 paper, like a 3 right. decades old paper, and there's like there's just one section where they defined like two stages, like one stage lasting 14 million years, where they have a slow build-up in diversity, but then the increase in diversity hits a exponential curve, basically. So you have two phases, one 40 million years slow build-up, and another 5 to 10 million years exponential increase. And so,
but even under that, it's still this long, slow build-up, which is tens of millions of years before you get to this point.
Yeah, it's like the total time frame is already 14 plus 5 to 10, so it's like 19 to 24 million years. That's the total period. Of course, the Discovery Institute people want to focus on the exponential growth curve, which is 5 to 10 million years. But then, when you correct for the boundary, like they date a boundary at one point, but now this boundary is the age for this boundary is different. So now the exponential increase is about 14 million years old as well. So 14 million years of slow build-up plus 40 million years of exponential increase is 28 million years in total.
Right. Yeah. It's just dishonesty. That's all this is. Yeah. They're just being dishonest. They're using Cambrian explosion to refer just to the exponential period, not to the whole thing. So they're trying to again pull this sort of bait and switch, where you get confused into thinking that the Cambrian itself, the whole radiation's only 5 to 10 million years, when it just isn't true. It says when it says or possibly much less, what I think that's a reference to is that paper that came out recently that says the actual transition in like sediment or benthic fauna occurred in like 400,000 years. So what that means is not that these organisms evolved in 400,000 years. It means that they were not prevalent enough in their environment until they reached this sort of tipping point when then over the course of about 400,000 years, they became more prevalent. And so because there's this concept in ecology called phase shifts. And so phase shifts are where you have these ecological changes that cause a new set of organisms to take over, maybe, and they're already in the environment, but they're much less prominent. But basically, the environment reaches a tipping point where suddenly it flips, and the things that were prominent become more rare, and the things that were more rare become more prominent. And that's a phase shift. That's a very common idea within ecology, and so it's not like they just evolved suddenly. They were already there.
It's like ecological succession. Like first you have the pioneer species, and then once you have an ecology established, then new like species begin to take over, become prevalent, and then perhaps pioneer species become either rare or absent at the end point. Yeah.
Majestic.
I think also. Oh, so yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Majestic Payback for $10 says, "Here's $1 per million compensation for their 10 million year mistake." Oh, thank you. You were saying, Nestle?
Like I was saying, if you look at the transition from the Precambrian all the way to the Ordovician, you see different ecological changes. Like first in the Ediacaran, you have like only like a microbial math dominated ecosystem, like almost no ecosystem basically. Like there's no predators at all. It seems right. Like they're only at the most they're only like passive filter feeders and maybe a few grazers on the microbial mat, like Dickinsonia or Kimberella, like grazing upon the microbial mat. Like it was really like a relatively peaceful ecosystem with no predator and prey almost, right? Back then, yeah.
Absolutely.
But then you see the first, then in the just before, I think, or maybe just after, you begin to see the first boreholes in like shells.
Yeah, that's the Claudinus. That's that's the very terminal Ediacaran. Yeah.
Yes, and also you begin to see the first like deep burrows as well. So I think it begins to see like, oh, some organisms are like burrowing to get away from something almost. Like that. Yes.
Right. Yeah, and again, because of all these guys are soft-bodied organisms, we have very few actual like body fossils of what was around in that time. You have to go to very specific locations on Earth, which are called Lagerstätten, to find body fossils, because otherwise you just get nothing. They're just totally smushed by sediments. So yeah,
and even when you go into the Cambrian with where you have things like Anomalocaris and predators, most of the organisms still stays very closely to the bottom of the sea floor. But when you move into the Ordovician, that's when you begin to see like pelagic organisms, like open ocean organisms, basically filter feeders like ammonites and such. So it has many different ecological stages. The also the Nectonic Revolution is called for. I think what happened in the Ordovician, the Nectonic Revolution. Yeah, like again, big terms. Revolution. It happened over a very long time, of course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Evolutionary scientists have failed to explain the Cambrian explosion. Some postulate that the Precambrian fossils were simply too small or too soft-bodied to be preserved. There are Precambrian fossils, and they're all soft-bodied, and you can only find them in Lagerstätten. You can only find these organisms in places with extremely good preservation. That's it. So, I mean, that's true. This is true that these organisms are soft-bodied, and that contributes to them being difficult to preserve. So, I don't know what they want. This explanation has severe deficiencies, as small and soft-bodied organisms were commonly fossilized. In fact, the Cambrian explosion is full of them. Again, this is so confusing. The small and soft-bodied organisms, again, are being fossilized in specific preservation modes. That's the Lagerstätten. Or, as the next one mentions, Precambrian sponge embryos have been discovered, demonstrating that if small and soft-bodied transitional organisms existed, they could have been fossilized. Again, we're talking about phosphatized embryos, which are very, very small. And actually, RJ just says, the DI mantras never deal with the phosphatization factor of Precambrian embryos, limiting preserved size to 0.5 millimeter. Right, exactly. So, yeah, organisms, these soft-bodied organisms are only getting preserved in Lagerstätten, in these certain strata. They're not getting preserved everywhere. You're not just going to find just a Charnia in some non-Lagerstätten deposit. It's just not going to happen. You have to go to these specific deposits to find them. The Cambrian explosion. Again, the Cambrian explosion. All those are Lagerstätten, Burgess Shale, the Mautienshen Shale. I'm trying to think what else. Those are both of those.
The Zhenjiang biota, right?
Yeah, Zhenjiang biota. Those are all Lagerstätten. Again, it's just Lagerstätten. Now D3 intrigues me because intelligent design proponents don't know what to do about this. What they're referencing is a paper from 1998 that found in the Duchanteau formation these fossils, which are little teeny tiny, Sirius Passet in Greenland. That's another one. Yep, exactly right. These little teeny tiny structures, some of which are probably animal embryos. At the very least, they're holozoans. But some of them, I think, are likely animal embryos. Now, some of them
Caviaspera is probably the best candidate. Caviaspera.
There's a couple of them, that are probably animal embryos. Some of them are like acritarchs, so they are. I mean, technically, they could be acritarchs even if they're animals. They're probably protists, is what I mean. So they're not animals per se, and that's fine.
Sorry, Dapper. He says protist. I know you don't like these terms.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dapper. Sorry, Dapper.
Yep. So. So yeah. So the thing about the embryos, is intelligent design can't really decide what to do about these embryos, because on the one hand, you have Gunter Beckley, who argues none of them are embryos. In fact, Beckley argues there are no animals in the Precambrian, which is bananas. It's just bananas. Yeah, because even he will acknowledge, like, okay, this thing might be a cnidarian, that's fine, but so what? And it's like, well, then stop saying there are no animals. You have to pick one. You can't say there are no animals, but also, I don't really care if they're actually sponges in the Precambrian. Can't do it.
Well, they aren't impressive animals, so
right, they're not cool enough.
Animals not worth mentioning.
Right. Oh, well, thank you for coming, Sai. We appreciate having you. Good to see you. But yeah, so on the one hand, you have like Stephen Meyer, who makes this argument, the argument we see right in front of us, which is that, oh, well, if these tiny soft-bodied things got preserved, everything soft should be preserved, which is just an insane take.
Yes.
Because there should be fossils of bacteria everywhere then. I mean, where are they? Where are all the cyanobacterial mats, fossils of cyanobacterial mats all over the world? Where are they? Right? Where are they? But no, that's insane. But at the same time, Gunter Beckley wants to make the argument that actually, no, these aren't even animals at all. They're not soft-bodied animals. They're not even animals. So you have some DI people saying the fact that they're animals proves that, like, there are no transitional fossils in the Precambrian, whereas at the same time, other DI people are saying, no, there are no animals in the Precambrian. So it's like, please pick one. Please tell us what your argument is. We're very curious. You can't have it both ways. There are other examples of explosions in the fossil record. Yeah, we just talked about one. Beckley is the equivalent of nailing Jello to a wall. Very true. I had to read through all 8 of his stupid blog posts that he wrote about the Meyer script that we wrote, and yeah, they're very stupid. And the funny thing is, after I wrote the script, right before Professor Dave started like making the video, he was like, "Okay, I'm going through the script again. Can you explain this in more detail?" And I found more lies that Beckley said that I didn't even catch the first time. It's so bad, so bad. There are other examples of explosions in the fossil record. Most major fish groups appear abruptly. I'm not really sure what they mean by that, because the first chordates appear in the Cambrian, like Hycoichthyes, Hycuella,
Yes.
Pekaya. These guys appeared in the Cambrian. The first, like, jawless fish appeared in the earliest Ordovician, which is after the earliest chordates.
Like the early relatives of the lampreys and the hagfish, the early relatives of those.
Right. Yeah, so early jawed fish. Then later, you get the earliest jawed fish. So you have jawless fish first, then jawed fish. Then you get the split between, like, you have some shark-like jawed fish, and then you have jawed fish that are more like our bony fish. And so again, like a Doliotis is an early chondrichthyon. But these guys all came out of early jawed fish stock, the placoderms, which is a paraphyletic group.
Yeah, placoderms are like the paraphyletic group from which every modern jawed vertebrate came from. Yeah. This is actually again, what they mean is not defined, but it's still weird that, like, what group is most fish? What group do most fish belong to?
Yeah,
the raven fish, and those didn't really begin to then diversify until after the Devonian, and especially in the Cretaceous. Like in the Cretaceous, that's when the raven fish went really crazy.
Yeah, right. And I think there was also some diversification they did in the Triassic also.
Yes.
But even still, more to the point, right? Because they didn't come out of nowhere. There were a series of radiations, that especially occurred in the Cretaceous. But there are fossil fish like Guiu, which I guess I can put here in the side chat, or Guiu, not entirely sure how to pronounce it. These guys, this fossil fish is from the Silurian and has characteristics that put it near the base of the split between ray and lobe-finned fish. So we have fossils right at the base of the split.
Yeah, I think it's just closer to the lobe-finned fish, right? Like,
I think
barely.
Right.
Like, barely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Barely
but
close.
It's like it gives you an idea of what they would have looked like at that time.
Like if we had something similar to the raven side, it would almost look the same basically as Guy.
Right.
I think the only difference is like this, like the first thing, like one of the first things that distinguished the lobe-finned fish from the ray-finned fish is that lobe-finned fish are monopodial. Their fins are like articulating with the rest of the body with only one bone, and that's it. Like one bone. The beginnings of the humerus, basically. Yes.
Okay. That is cool. And you know what? We just talked about the evolution of fish to tetrapods in our in the lungfish's tail. So if you guys are interested in that, go check that one out.
Yes.
So
we talk about nostrils. We talk about nostrils. Yes.
Honestly, the nostrils one was the coolest for me. Because, like, I mean, the transition, like the bringing forward all the like opercular bones, that's really cool and all, and I think that's neat. But like the fact that the nostrils, like, instead of going out the sides, like get progressively shifted to the inside of the mouth, that's really cool. I think that's super neat. And Canichthyes has them like right on the like inside of the upper jaw. Like, that's super cool.
Yeah, like right on the edge of the jaw. Yes.
Yeah, like
not
intermediate.
It's perfectly in the middle, like not outside nor inside, just right on the edge.
Yeah, just perfectly intermediate. It's amazing. That's so cool. Plant biologists observed that the initial appearance of many land plants, the terrestrial equivalent of the much debated Cambrian explosion of marine faunas. I don't know what they're quoting. There's no citation there. However,
so the citation needed.
Yeah, citation needed, please.
Citation needed.
But the thing about land plants is there are bryophyte-like marine algae that were in the Cambrian. So we do have fossils of algae that are very similar to the embryophytes, but not quite there yet. And they're in the Cambrian. And then the first land plants appear in the Ordovician. And the first land plants are the non-vascular land plants, which again, based on phylogenetics, we should expect, whether or not they're monophyletic or paraphyletic, either way, we should expect that they would appear first, and they do. They sure do.
Yeah. It's like not the non-vascular is still an ancestral trait, regardless whether the modern non-vascular plants are monophyletic or not.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So again, we can. That is a fulfilled prediction. Then you get your ferns and lycophytes, and again, those show up next, and then you get your progymnosperms, which include the eventual ancestors of both the actual gymnosperms and much later the angiosperms. And so we get this congruence between stratigraphy and phylogeny, which we should expect given if evolution is true, but we don't necessarily have to expect if intelligent design is true. Later in the fossil record, there's an explosion of flowering plants, sometimes referred to as the Big Bloom. So we talked about this in the Professor Dave video. Also, there are actually lots of stem groups of angiosperms, like the Bennettitales, the Pentoxylales, Gigantoteriales. All those are stem groups that go like as far back as the Carboniferous, which again we should expect if gymnosperms and angiosperms shared a common ancestor in like the early Carboniferous or late Devonian, one of those. So if they shared a common ancestor back then, we should expect to see all these stem groups for flowering plants. And indeed, it has been difficult because it's been difficult to place a lot of these guys because they don't have all the characteristics of modern angiosperms. They don't have the flower. You don't see the flower going past like the early Cretaceous as of yet.
Yes.
And so you have to look for other characteristics that these plant groups share with the angiosperms. And that can be kind of difficult because it can be hard to figure out which things are convergently evolved, which things are ancestral. So there's been a lot of debate over that. But the picture's coming clearer into focus now. And so just saying the Big Bloom really doesn't mean anything either.
Oh, sorry about that. Like I've seen an interesting paper that or several papers that argues that the reason, like right at the beginning of the Cretaceous, we have among the first angiosperms, or at least what used to be the first. I think we have interesting candidates before, but in the beginning of the Cambrian, the beginning of the Cretaceous, the angiosperms were still a bit rare, but then they began to take over at the middle of the Cretaceous, roughly speaking. And one of the reasons why, or at least one argument that the researchers make, is that angiosperms have a advantage when it comes to their structure of the leaves. Like you have these things called stomata, which they breathe carbon dioxide in to photosynthesis, to build up biomass, basically. But at the same time, when they do that, they lose water out from these stomata. But angiosperms are more efficient regarding that. So the argument is that as carbon dioxide levels went down to a certain point, that's when the angiosperms gained the advantage over the gymnosperms at that point.
Okay.
But even then, even at the end of the Cretaceous, when the angiosperms were the most prevalent flora, the gymnosperms still were the most common big plants. Like most large trees were the gymnosperms. It wasn't until after the
Right.
extinction event that's when the angiosperms became the most prevalent trees as well, the big plants.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I just briefly address the squirrel again, because I'm it's probably just me. Chapter 15. Sudden gradual change. Is it sudden or is it gradual? Which of the two
I think
is
they
it?
mean sudden and gradual change.
I don't know, but then they start with point number 3. Where are 1 and 2? Well, what did they say?
On the other page.
Yeah, but this is a new chapter. It's a new chapter. You can't have a new chapter start in the middle of the other chapter. It's just stupid.
No, it's the same chapter. These are all part of the same chapter. These are sub-chapters within the chapter 15.
But why do you put a bar in there if the chapter just continues? You don't need the bar.
A bar? What do you mean?
The purple bar where it says chapter 15, sudden gradual change.
That's the top of the page.
Yeah, but it's a new chapter.
No, it's the same chapter. It's multiple pages within the same chapter.
Maybe it's just me. Well, even if it's a subchapter doesn't start in the middle of a paragraph with bullet points. You can't.
Well, I don't know. I think it's, again, they're just mantras, so I think they're just trying to like list as many as they can. I don't think they care that much.
They're trying to distract us.
Paleontologists
from the stupid.
Believe there was a mammal explosion. That sounds painful. With the abrupt appearance of many orders of mammals. Now, I like how they're couching this, because if you remember, Stephen Meyer said mammals appeared in the Eocene. Stephen Meyer said that in an interview. And nobody caught that because they published it. So now they're not saying mammals appeared in the Eocene. They're not even specifying a time period here. They're just saying the abrupt appearance of many orders of mammals. What does abrupt mean and what does many mean? That's what I want to know.
By the way, James Downer and Icarus, you're both right. I'm losing IQ points. Honestly.
Yeah, because it is Discovery uneducation. So we're actually losing information as we go through this. Yeah, the what they're talking about is the radiation of mammals in the Eocene. So there was, in fact, like a radiation of, or diversification, whatever you want to call it, I don't care, of mammals in the Eocene. But there were orders of mammals prior. Well, even if you want to say like crown orders, there were crown orders of mammals in that were in the Paleocene, but there were also crown orders, or there were also stem groups of mammals that go way, 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 way back in time, right? So you have crown placental mammals basically arose in, or had a big diversification in the Eocene. But there were already stem placental mammals and some crown placental mammals in the Paleocene, and you had stem like therians and stem mammals, going back further than that, because the stem group of mammals diverged from the stem group of sauropsids in the late Carboniferous. And yet, as RJ well knows, in intelligent design proponents and creationists in general don't talk about the evolution of mammals. They don't talk about the early synapsids. What were the ancestors of mammals like in the Permian, in the Triassic, in the Jurassic? That really never comes up for creationists, because again, mammals have like a perfect transition in terms of their jaw structure, and we've talked about that before. Never comes up with creationists. Just doesn't come up. There was also a bird explosion. Again, sounds painful. with major bird groups appearing in a short time period, that's referring to like right after. It was right after the Cretaceous extinction, right, Nestling? It was like right after that they all split, wasn't it?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The bird groups appearing in a short time period, that was like right after the KT extinction, right?
Like it depends on which group you talk about. Like the neo-avians.
The neo-aves. Yeah, I think it was
the
neo-aves.
But like again, like the molecular, there is some range regarding the molecular divergence estimates. So, but pretty much all of them say that they all like several lineages, like about 6 or so, diverged either just before or just after the extinction event, about the same time, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, even with neo-aves, birds were already around.
Yes.
Right? They'd already split from the Paleognates and like Gallo-Ancerae in the late Cretaceous. That had already happened.
Yeah.
Even though
we had crown groups, we had crown birds in the Cretaceous, and also many stem groups like the Enantiornithines. Yes.
Yep, and Confucius hornets and all those guys. Yeah, exactly.
And
we had stem and crown birds in the late Cretaceous. So again, saying it's a radiation. Okay, we're not arguing that there's not a radiation, but we're couching it in the actual evolution, which is that yes, it occurred within the evolution of this group as a whole. It didn't come out of nowhere. And they're just kind of arguing like, oh, you know, there was nothing, and then suddenly the birds were everywhere. Like, no, that's not what happened, actually. Because the first birds date to the late Jurassic, remember? Archaeopteryx. And like, I don't know if they consider, well, Aurornis keeps changing places, but, you know, at least Archaeopteryx is still considered an avialin, so, yeah. Some have even described the abrupt origin of our own genus Homo as an explosion. I don't think so. We're descended from Australopiths. We know this. We know who our ancestors were.
They just love to repeat the explosion thing in order to diminish the Cambrian explosion. Yeah, we also had cetacean explosions, mostly after they beached themselves.
We had exploding cats. Yeah. Okay. All right, we can keep going.
Punctuated.
So again, like I want to point out to everyone that like we're not arguing that you can't call these things explosions or radiations or whatever. Sure you can, but like at least have a definition of what that means, what that entails. Because just saying, oh, it was really fast. Well, okay, but so what? Just saying it was fast is not an argument. Part 2. Punctuated equilibrium, or punc-ec. Because the fossil record has not confirmed Darwin's predictions of gradual evolution, paleontologists like Stephen Jay Gould proposed a theory where evolution takes place rapidly. No. Gould was not the one who proposed that. Frickin' Hugo de Vries was proposing that idea around the year 1900. Gould and Eldridge proposed punctuated equilibrium in the late 1960s. So, like, this is just nonsense. You also had Richard Goldschmidt, who was proposing rapid evolution in the 40s. And what de Vries and Goldschmidt were proposing is not what Gould was proposing. They were different ideas. Because Goldschmidt and de Vries were proposing macro mutations, basically. Really big mutations would occur that would change one species or change, you know, an individual into like a member of a new species, basically. And then you could have selection to spread that allele, but it was, the idea was that like microevolution and macroevolution were in fact separate phenomena. You had microevolution, which was, or so like you could have mutations. Most mutations would only give you slight variations, but to go from one species to another, you had to actually have a big mutation event, which would confer a very large difference. So according to this theory, most evolution takes place in small populations over relatively short geological time periods too rapidly for transitional forms to be fossilized. No, that is a common misconception that intelligent design people like to say, but that is not what Gould argued. Gould and Eldridge argued that if you want to look for transitional forms, you shouldn't look where the species is normally found. You should look on the periphery of their range. So Gould and Eldridge wrote about it was a bivalves. No, it wasn't. It was a gastropod, I think. They wrote about this gastropod where normally you have, like, if you look in this one area, this is where you have the central population, and they don't change very much. But if you go from the central population out, if you go over to the periphery of their range, you can find these smaller populations where these transitional forms are being found. The change is happening in the small allopatric populations, not in the large sympatric population. So they very much expected transitional forms to be found. And just read their works if you don't believe me. Just go read their works.
Yeah, and also the transitions they are concerned with is the transition from one species to the next, and not necessarily like larger scale, like from one parent taxa or taxon to another daughter taxon, basically. So we can still have like major groups intermediates, but from one species to the next, like species to species transition is a very fine scale.
Right.
And I think his argument is that for when you have a speciation event, the speciation event occurs relatively quickly, like a few thousand years, like that. But the species themselves can last for millions of years and stay relatively the same.
Right.
Stasis, and that's stasis, yeah.
Right.
But
yeah, exactly.
Maybe I'm going to ask another stupid question, but
have at it.
It's too rapidly for transitional forms to be fossilized. So fossilization happens when the conditions are right for some species to be fossilized. Are these conditions only coming out on a schedule? Someone, I mean, those are random events. Why would it be too rapidly? You could have those conditions be right very shortly, one after another. Why would it be too rapid? That's the.
I think.
Imagine if you take a snapshot every 3 million years or so. So you might, like, because it's a very wide range, you might miss anything that happens within a few thousand years. That's the issue. But of course, there are situations, like very rare situations, where we can see a very good fossil record, where we see actual speciation event happening, like I think like a diatom or something like that, where you can see first one species and then they split into one larger size species and a one that's shorter, right? And I forgot its name.
Well, I mean, I think that happens with different species.
Yeah,
you can see that in lots of different, like, radiolarians and things like that, where you have like your one species, then they split, one becomes smaller, one becomes larger, and they go off in their separate directions.
Yeah,
that happens. But yeah, these periods of rapid change are interspersed between long time spans without much change, called stasis. Yeah, that's part of his idea. Punctuated equilibrium faces a number of problems. Dun dun dun. The Punch-Eck model requires too much genetic change too quickly.
How much is too much?
Yeah, how much is too much? What do you mean? What's too quickly? Define these terms, please. Give us some actual model. It compresses the vast majority of evolutionary change into small populations that live during a small segment of time, allowing too few rolls of the dice for beneficial mutations to arise. That's not what the idea specifies. So with founder populations, mutations are not arising more rapidly. And I think we talked about this when we did the deflate video, Because didn't he argue something like mutations are occurring faster or something like that? I think that was the thing he said.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it's almost like they are saying like, oh, mutations occur at a higher rate.
You're right. The smaller your population is, the faster the mutations rise. No, that's not at all how that works. It's more like you're taking a sample, and now it just so happens if you take a random sample, you may get an allele that's rare in the original population, but it can become more common in the small sample.
Yes.
So that's what's happening. It is not that the rare allele is arising in the small sample.
But Jackson,
they become fixed faster. Yeah.
See, this is. I watched a Hovind video. I'm stupid. I know. I shouldn't do that. But
my condolences.
Yes. So he was talking about the flood again quite recently and explaining the White Cliffs of Dover, where we find basically diatoms, thousands upon thousands of years of diatoms. They all died in the Great Flood that lasted a year. So it's time is irrelevant to these people. You can speed things up if it's handy, and you can slow things down when it's handy. I mean, there's no consistency in these arguments.
Why be consistent when you can just say things?
Yeah. The time is indeed irrelevant to these people because that's why they cite 30-odd papers.
But that's brand new science, Leslie. You know this. That's cutting edge.
Number 3 is an amazing argument. Punk can appear to simply be an excuse for why transitional fossils are missing. Would you believe someone who claimed to capture fairies and leprechauns on video, but when asked to produce the film, declares, well, they're on camera, but they're too small or too fast to be seen? Now,
we have seen the punctuated equilibrium, like, or at least evidence of it, punctuated equilibrium.
Folks,
and also find out the gradualism. We have seen both modes of evolution.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. You see both of them in the fossil record. It's not one or the other. It's both. But what I love about that argument is I've read papers by like Philip Gingrich where he is critiquing punctuated equilibrium, and also Zach Hancock. I don't know if he's still in the side chat. I haven't seen him in a while, but Zach Hancock has written papers about it. Nobody ever argues that punctuated equilibrium is false simply because you can't produce evidence of transitional fossils, or by analogizing that punctuated equilibrium is like trying to catch a leprechaun on video. I can honestly say no one has made that argument in the scientific literature. That is just silly. It's just silly. It's so very silly. Okay. Part 4, Evo Devo. Some evolutionists have hoped that a field called evolutionary developmental biology, Evo Devo, could explain how large evolutionary changes could arise rapidly through mutations in the genes controlling the development of an organism. Again, no. It's not necessarily about these mutations being fast, or sorry, about the changes arising rapidly. These mutations that are causing changes in the developmental plans, these don't have to be like all rapid. These can be like over time, right? I don't know. This is very strange to me. I don't know why they're characterizing Evo Devo as like, there you go, there's an evolutionary change. Like, no one thinks that.
They can still occur over like many thousands or millions of years.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are a few mutations that do like make some how do you call it? Like a discrete difference, like one that we discussed before, like the change in appendage from a walking appendage to a feeding appendage in crustaceans.
Right. Yeah. That's true, but like nobody is asserting that that's true of all.
No.
developmental changes, like, yeah, no. Weirdness. Anyway, proponents of Evo Devo, okay, as though like Evo Devo isn't just a field in science that just exists. Okay, you have to be a proponent of it, otherwise it's not real. Contend that changes to the master genes that control the development of an organism, such as HOX or homeobox genes, can cause large abrupt changes in body plans. Well, yeah, I mean that's like obviously true. That's been literally observed.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
The mutation in those genes can cause like abrupt changes, but that's something to be discussed also again in our talk with the body plan evolution and gene regulatory networks. Is that like many changes don't occur in the HOX genes themselves; they occur in the downstream genes of the HOX genes. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
In fact, the HOX genes mostly stay the same. They are very conserved across life,
right,
to the point where you can interchange them and still have the same function, even.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the case with PAX6, which
Yes.
is one of the regulators of eye development, which is a homeobox gene. It's not a HOX gene. It is a homeobox gene.
Yeah.
It has the homeobox.
Yeah.
But I was just specifying for the audience.
Yeah.
But so PAX6, you can take it out of, literally, it has been taken out of mice, put in fruit flies, and fruit flies develop normal fruit fly eyes. Crazy stuff. That's like that's like 600 plus million years of evolution that's separating them, you know.
And in that case, the downstream genes changed. The downstream process, the control element didn't change.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Evo Devo faces various problems. Developmental genes are tightly interconnected, and thus changes in one gene will affect many others, making most mutations lethal. That may be the case, but you have to remember how many individuals are in a population and how many potential mutations there are, and so it really depends.
Like you can actually disagree with this, because like what we see in Evo Devo is a very modular system where like one mutation can have an effect on one part of the body, but not necessarily the whole body as a whole. So you can have cases of modularity where this is not the case at all.
Yeah, sure, and that's true, definitely. Like, well, yeah, I mean, look at like segmentation in like annelids or arthropods or onychophorans. Like, do you think adding one more segment is really going to just derail the whole thing? Probably not, you know, or taking away one segment. Well, no, clearly not. I mean, look at the diversity of annelids. Look at the diversity of onychophorans, or well, rip to the onychophorans in the chat, or the arthropods. Like, look at, you know, millipedes and centipedes. There's huge variety in the amount of segments that millipedes and centipedes have, and that's regulated by HOX genes. That's you know, that's mutations that are causing increases or decreases.
I think the number of segments they have is controlled by some type of clock system. Like they're adding the segments to the growth. Like we have vertebrates have a somatic. It's the somites, right?
Right.
And that,
yeah, the somites.
Segments are added. Yes.
But the cool thing about that is it's much faster for snakes compared to us, because we have far fewer vertebrae than snakes have. So they got way more of these to make. So their clock is going like, all right, deposit new somite, deposit new somite, deposit. You know, they're just going way faster than ours.
Yes.
Yeah. Jackson, my unfinished journey for $5 says, Jackson, I've noticed you pronounce process as process. Are you secretly Canadian? I think I flip back and forth. I think sometimes I say process and sometimes process. Am I secretly Canadian? I don't think so. I think I have, I don't know. I've got like Native American ancestry on one side and like a lot of English ancestry on the other. I don't think there's really any Canadian in there, but I wouldn't mind if the Canadians want to adopt me. I'll be there. I'll take it.
On the flat Earth model, you live close to their border, Jackson.
Oh, good. Oh, good. It's only a 19-hour drive from me.
Yeah,
So,
that's in the globe Earth model, the flat Earth models.
not the flat. Okay. Well, you know what? In that case, I'll take more trips to Canada then.
Yay.
So, anyway, where were we? Hox genes do not encode proteins that build body parts. They merely direct the genes that encode body parts. Thus, Hox mutations can only rearrange parts that are already there. They cannot create truly novel structures.
No, that's fine. Although again, what counts as truly novel?
What?
Again,
yeah, okay. If you have, okay, this argument's hurting my brain. Okay. So on the one hand, you can't, I guess according to them, you can't mutate Hox genes. But even if you do, you can't create anything novel because the Hox gene already exists. Well, it's heads I win, tails you lose again, I guess. Because think, for instance, about like the earliest arthropods, did not have antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Antenna were exapted from walking appendages that moved progressively up the head. Would you say an antenna is a new structure? I would, because it didn't exist previously, and now it does exist. Right? Now you could argue, of course, well, the antenna is just a repurposed leg, so it's not really new. Well, yeah, okay, but then nothing in evolution could ever be new, right?
I would define novelty as regarding
Right.
the function
Right.
of the organ.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Mouth parts are another one, right? Like insect mouth parts are also exapted from legs, so clearly that didn't exist prior. It had to be their walking limbs had to be exapted or converted into chewing parts. So like, is that new? I would say it's new. They weren't doing that before, but now they do that. And in fact, with some like older or some groups like the Ziphosaurans, the horseshoe crabs, they still use their legs as like helping them to chew up food. They still do that.
It's almost like they chew with their elbows, almost.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Or like their chelicerae, their actual mouth parts, which for horseshoe crabs and like the little daddy long leg guys, the opiliones, are tiny claws, but they're like only half claws for spiders, and they're venom injection systems, which they aren't for the other groups. So again, is that new? Depends. It's a novel function because that's not how scorpions use their chelicerae. It's not how horseshoe crabs use it, but it is how spiders use it. So I'd say it's novel. So
again, undefined, and even if you reasonably define it, and then it's wrong because you.
Yes.
I can also bring up one example in the plants that I mentioned before. I mentioned that the early diverging angiosperms, like for example the magnolia, have the male part and the female part, but they also have the petals, although they are technically called tepals because petals is when they are differentiated from the sepals. So like most typical flowers you can see have the green leaf-like things on the outside, followed by the petals. But magnolia doesn't have that. Magnolia has only the petal-like tepals. So, but when you move down to a group within the eudicots, that's when the differentiation between the sepals and petals become apparent. And this differentiation was basically triggered by a change in how the homeotic genes were expressed. In this case, the homeotic genes are the matchbox genes of plants. So you can have something new just by having different ways of how you express these control genes, basically.
Or
just
in
different expression pattern.
Yeah. Or in keeping with the plant example, the ovary of flowering plants, or the gynecium, I should say, the whole gynecium, not just the ovary, the whole thing. The whole gynecium, the female part, is a set of leaves. Originally, it's derived from leaves that were originally that were glued together, which is what you still see in Ambarella, the most basally derived extant flower. But they're fused in all other flowering plants. The actual the leaves that form the gynecium are fused together. And so again, would you say that's new, or is it just an existing structure? Well, it was leaves. Petals are also just modified leaves. The the andrecium, the male part of the flower, which has the pollen, is also just modified leaves. Because again, if you look at very basally derived flowering plants, the pollen is made like on a petal, is what it looks like. It looks like the pollen's made on the petal. But as you get more derived, it's not like you look at magnolias, and their andrecium is much like thinner. It's much tighter. And then finally you get to your eudicots and monocots, where it's what we typically think of with the andrecium. It's much more.
It's like a thin, just
like a filament,
a sac of pollen and a filament. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah. So again, is it new? Is it just modifying old parts? Well, it depends on how you define it. You have to actually give us a definition to work with.
Yes.
The best examples of evolutionary change produced by evo-devo mechanisms are meager and often entail loss rather than gain. Again, what is meager? What do you mean? There are no examples here. They're not even saying anything.
I am not impressed. That's basically the argument.
Yes.
Not impressed.
They're not saying anything here. Okay.
Yeah.
We might want to save this one for next time. We're getting pretty close to the
12 minutes. Yeah.
To the line. Yeah. Minutes. Is this the last section?
This is the last section of
oh, really?
chapter 15. Well,
okay.
No, yeah, then we have a quiz and then we go to chapter 16. So this is the last section. So we can cover it in 15 minutes, I guess.
Okay. The explosions of fully formed body plans in the fossil record require a cause that can rapidly infuse massive amounts of information, that doesn't mean anything, to encode and integrate the necessary proteins, cell types, tissues, and organs. Again, doesn't mean anything. They're not arguing anything. They're just saying nothing. There is only one known cause that can accomplish these tasks: intelligence. Again, really,
citation needed.
Citation needed. Like, yeah, I'm not aware of any intelligent causes for new cell types, tissues, or organs. I'm not aware of any. I'd like to see some evidence for that, but they're not going to provide it.
And we discussed this topic fully in the topic about gene regulatory networks and body plans. I think we covered this pretty. I hope I did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Design theorists have observed that intelligent agents are uniquely capable of rapidly infusing large amounts of information in the biosphere. Again, citation? Where did you observe this? How? Where's your documentation? Only intelligence can produce the complex and specified information. That doesn't mean anything either. Necessary to coordinate many levels of organization into a functional body plan. Again, they're not saying anything. This doesn't mean anything. Only intelligence can conceive of a fully formed blueprint ahead of time prior to implementing the design in the real world. I don't care. The fossil record supports ID's prediction that species might appear abruptly.
Did Otangelo co-author these pages?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Indicating the rapid infusion of new information in the natural world. Are they saying that all species, that like no species are related to each other? Is that what this is implying? Species might appear abruptly.
This is just white noise. Like they are just asserting that, like they are asserting that their theory, if you can call it, predicts fast appearance of fossils, but they don't explain how it predicts that.
Right.
How does the ID predict the Cambrian diversification? How?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There is no explanation of that.
Design theorists have observed that intelligent agents are uniquely capable of using large amounts of information to create blueprints, which leads to fully functional machines and new types of organisms.
That's definitely
none of that meant anything.
That's definitely a point that came straight from Otangelo. That's
Nothing
one of
in
his
this section.
talking points. And how did they observe this? Because I'm just thinking that we're still talking about new species. They have observed intelligent agents. I need
They've
to see some of that.
apparently observed intelligent agents infusing information into the biosphere. I would love to see that. I would love to know what they're referring to.
So is there a video we can go watch?
Apparently, like newly designed organisms appear all the time.
I guess.
At least,
I guess
at
so.
least sometimes. At least sometimes, perhaps.
I guess so. Yeah. They say so. I guess. I don't know. All right. Well, you want to pull us back to the 3-person screen? Oh, and a dog. And a dog.
Also, I would like to like for next time perhaps I would like or maybe never like we don't go over their abiogenesis stuff, right? But I would guess they make the argument that no scientist has ever created a life form in the lab, probably.
I'm willing to bet that you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, but which is basically contradicting this, because now here they are saying like, something intelligent did create something in real life, like we observed it happening sometimes. Like what are they referring to? I have no idea.
Yeah. Intelligent designers can create things, except when they have to create life in the lab, then they can't do it, I guess.
But here they are saying that the infusion of new information in the biosphere had observed. Like when has this been observed?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any examples of that.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 50. What was it? Chapter 15? Oh no! Stop it.
Or maybe I'm referring to when Jesus turned water into wine. They created a bit of yeast in the beverage. Perhaps that's the creation of new life forms. The infusion of new information.
So the next section, so chapter 16, which we'll get to next time, is skeletons in their closet. Ooh, which I guess is probably about fossils. Yes. Oh yeah, this is the one we kind of briefly looked over, I think. We briefly looked at this one. So they're going to talk about the transitional forms. Oh boy, this one's going to be fun. Oh boy.
They discuss specific examples and explain, or quote unquote explain why they don't count.
Oh yeah. So that'll be fun. Because remember we looked at the horse one. The horse one is like both they didn't evolve, and also if they did, it didn't matter. So it was like completely contradictory.
As I win tells on you lose.
The main point seems to be identity problems.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss. What's an identity problem? When you're an intelligent design proponent and don't want to be mistaken for a younger creationist, I think that's an identity problem. Which is basically what's going on here.
That's possible.
It's still rehashing, albeit a little bit more precise, everything we covered in your book from the 60s, Jackson. There's not a lot of new stuff. Yeah.
No, there really isn't. They don't change. I mean, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Yeah.
If you can, if you can confuse poor schmucks, into buying your nonsense, then just keep at it. I mean, why stop?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. This chapter was garbage, as always. They really just I don't even understand what the argument was for Evo Devo. Like, I think they seem to think like Evo Devo was invented as like an escape route to explain how evolution could happen rapidly, which it just isn't. Like, that was never the point. So yeah, that's a little silly. What else do we talk about today?
Cambrian explosion.
Cambrian explosion.
Lots of explosions. Mammal explosions. Bird explosions.
Things were exploding all over the place.
Something.
Yeah, things explode.
Something Cambrian. Something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. I haven't actually started working on the coelacanth's tale yet, which is the next one in our series. Part of the reason is I'm getting real close to in theory finishing up with my master's degree this semester. So I'm trying yeah, so I'm we're like down to the wire, it's getting real close. So I'm trying to wrap everything up as fast as I can.
Yeah. If you need to focus on the dissertation, then I think your audience will forgive you to spend more time on your degree.
Well, this is
I would hope so. I would hope so.
Yeah, no, they crack the whip on me if I forget. I mean, it's only 2 hours 1 day a week, so I'm not super worried about it. But if at some point in the near future, I'm not able to do a show because of that, just understand that's probably what's happening. It's probably something related to that. So getting real close. I'm excited. I hope
we will do a premiere instead of 2 hours of juggling, and people will know that you're busy.
Okay, gotcha.
I've maybe a random idea. I don't know if you like it or not. Like, when you graduate, could we celebrate it by having a hangout on your topic of your dissertation, or if you want to or not?
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, we can. Sure, I don't care.
Yeah.
You want to do like that Thursday?
I think it would be. Yeah.
I don't know if we'd
or I don't know if I don't know if it's I don't know if it's confidential. It may be confidential.
It's not. No, it's not confidential at all or anything like that. But we could. Yeah. I mean, hey, look. As soon as the paper gets sent off and everything, I will not care anymore.
If we're going to do that show, I'm going to create the thumbnail, and it will just say, "Hello, I'm Jackson Wheat."
Yes.
My name is Jackson Wheat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I taught science on YouTube for 15
years. Yeah, we could talk
years.
about that. We talk. Actually, God, Peter, it's been like 7 years, hasn't it?
I think a bit more. I think we bumped into each other somewhere.
I started in 2016.
Yeah,
it was 2016. That was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So you could say, yeah, I've been teaching science on Twitter on YouTube for 7 years.
Yeah. I mean,
God, Peter, that makes me feel old. How has it been 7 years?
It just happened. It's in the blink of an eye. It's like the Cambrian explosion. It just happened so fast.
Correct. Yeah, the blink of a
everything happened so fast. I mean,
yeah.
But so this is one of the things that a few people seem to be still hanging around still with pretty much the same people, which I think is a good community. If I look over to the Christians, I have seen wars where they were armed to the teeth attacking each other. So I'm glad that didn't happen in our community.
Oh, and I mean, I mean, you have too. We've all seen, atheist circles blow up too. It happens. People fall out.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people are just, some people are just they get angry about stuff and there's disagreements and people have falling outs and stuff. But you're right, Peter. A lot of us though, we just don't have that. We've been fine. Everything's been fine for this whole time, and we haven't had really any disagreements.
Well, the reason I noticed is because I recently moved to Blue Sky, just in case Twitter gets even worse.
Right.
And I want to start building at least a decent following there. And my first followers on Twitter, 9 out of 10 are my first followers on Blue Sky. I mean, are my first followers on Twitter. The same people still there and happy. Hey, you're here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah, absolutely.
We have a pretty good community, and we can really be proud of the community we have.
Yeah, absolutely. RJ says, and I started the Tip project in 1997. That was the year I was born. So think about that. Little bit of time. That was one Jackson ago. Do what?
A proud millennial.
Oh, are you a millennial?
No, you were born in 1997, right?
96 is the first year of Zoomers.
Oh, really?
Is the first year of Gen Z. Yeah, so I'm first.
Oh, I'm a younger
Gen
millennial then. A very young millennial, just on the edge then. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm first edition Gen Z. That's me.
Well, you're the old Zoomer. I'm the young millennial. All right. Great combination.
So yeah, time flies when you're having fun. Yeah.
And then you've got the boomer pressing the buttons.
Peter, I guarantee you know the most about technology out of all of us here. So yeah.
Not so much about technology. I know a few cool tricks that I can pull off with some streaming software.
Peter, you're being too modest. You're being modest.
Well, I mean,
anyway. As Icarus says, okay, boomer.
No. Sorry. I was just thinking, like, the movie, like an old movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, with Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
Yeah. We have the boomer, the zoomer, and the millennial.
The boomer being the ugly. I'm just saying.
Oh.
No.
Alrighty. Well, we're past the 2-hour mark. So this was fun. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Nestlig. I appreciate your inputs as always. I look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday.
But before we end this, I have one last thing that I thought about. I have a good motto for the DiscoveryU.
Okay.
Discovery uneducated, sending delusions to the masses.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I like that one.
Yeah.
The delusion explosion.
The delusion explosion.
Yeah. Right. I'm finished.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
See you next week.